Well, greeting, ladies and gentlemen, and I trust you're well after what might have been for you, certainly was for me, a bit of a messy Monday. Yeah, on the way to the studio this morning, there were 3 or 4 sirens and an accident, and I just kind of sensed that a little bit of the world was having a difficult time, and of course, if you look at the mess in the world and in the news, that's true. But we're going to try and make it a better week, and so I would like to talk to you a little bit today about some of the things that might go along with something like this. Hey, did you know that Charles Darwin was an incredible guy, and unfortunately there's a very sad story about what happened to his daughter. But we'll learn something. We'll learn something new about that, and something that might be helpful to you too. So please join me as we listen to the story and then perhaps see if there's something that we can learn from that story that could be helpful and useful to you in your business so you can have a good week. I'm Stan Houston. The program is Interesting Ideas for a Monday, and it begins right now. Again, as I said, the title is exactly right. The touching and tragic story of Charles Darwin's bid to save his daughter's life. In my long time experience as a business performance coach, people who've listened to my radio programs, seen my many videos and heard me in person, and perhaps either had the fortune or misfortune of being coached by me in some way, know that there are a couple of expressions I like to use. One is, very simply, now we know. And another one is, who knew? Who knew? That's surprise. We didn't know that. And now perhaps we do. And then, now we know. Now, how that flows usually is something like this. We're going into a situation and we don't know who we can trust. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the situation is. And something goes, something happens, good or bad, up and down, back and forth. Finally, we have a key piece of information. Now we know. And when someone did something to me that wasn't very nice, and we were thinking that maybe there could be something that would be useful and helpful to us both, when it didn't work out, I just simply said, now we know. And I'm glad I know it now, because if I would have had to know it later, it would have been even more difficult. So now we know. And that kind of clarity is really vital. But there's also the story of who? Who knew? Well, here's the deal. Charles Darwin is obviously one of the more important figures in social history. And his response in the book on the evolution of the species, all of that, the whole theory of evolution, he is given a good deal of credit for or a good deal of blame for. And of course, some of the things that I used to read about him from some of the more conservative, religious or political or other people was that here he was, perhaps a real atheist, and he didn't believe in God, and he obviously came up with a theory of evolution to try and put an end to the story in Genesis against God's word. And so in many people's circle of, there we are, Charles Darwin is not a very good guy. On the other hand, the other circle of people, those who are kind of the, you might say, atheistic Nietzsche types, they kind of enjoyed him too. Because not only was Charles Darwin associated with evolution, but he was also associated, though he himself was not of that, a movement that was called social Darwinism. Now, we somehow misinterpret a lot of what Darwin said. What he really said was that creation evolves because what happens is the survival of the fittest, or what he would say is the species that had the ability to change, to evolve. Having the ability to evolve, to adapt to circumstances, this is what causes the species to become the way they are. And as a result, all of that is those species who didn't have the ability to evolve and change, they die out. And those that had the great ability to adapt and change, they survive. Obviously, the shark has survived by evolving through millions of years. So, those folks who said life is tough and you've got to adapt, you've got to be tough, and if you can't make it, you can't make it. Too bad. And so, any intervention to try and help the poor and unfortunate and those who are less equipped to make it in the marketplace of life, well, que sera, sera. And that kind of view was called social Darwinism. All right, too bad. It's the way it goes. The strong, the fit, the adapt, tough, they survive, and they're the ones who lead. And those who are weak, unable, can't make it, can't carry it, there they go. So Darwin was given responsibility in the very name for all of those things. And so that's who we kind of had a picture of him. However, just this weekend, I came across a story from what is called Aleteia, Aleteia, and it's a story of inspiration put out by a number of international Catholic organizations, and it has just that. It has, prayers and inspiration, good stories. It is really a very nice magazine, potpourri, beautiful website of all kinds of things. From recipes to stories of inspiration to instruction. Good work. They do good work, for sure. And this was here just this past weekend by a person named Cerith Gardiner. And it's Cerith, Gardiner. And it was just that. The touching and tragic story of Charles Darwin's bid to save his daughter's life. And it is certainly worth listening to, so if you just give me a few minutes, could I read the story to you with dear full credit and attribution to Aleteia and to Cerith, I hope I'm getting that right, Gardiner. Darwin went to great lengths to find a cure for his 10-year-old daughter. Here's the story. Walking through an unknown graveyard can conjure up a mixture of emotions. It may bring up sadness about a deceased loved one, or feelings of gratitude for the life you have. Yet for those who appreciate the peace of a cemetery, and by the way, that's underlined. That's true. The peace of a cemetery. It's an invitation into the lives of complete strangers who come before us. That was just the case for me on a recent visit to the cemetery in Priory Church, Malvern, in Worcestershire, England. Priory Church, Malvern, in Worcestershire, in England. There we go. And then there's a beautiful picture of this beautiful kind of Romanesque church. Okay, here's what it goes. Here's how the story goes from there on. It says, to provide a little background, the Priory stands in the idyllic Malvern Hills, but it was originally the home to 30 monks back in the 11th century. Over the centuries, the monastery expanded substantially and even received 2 stained glass windows from King Henry VII, whose son, Henry VIII, then plundered the place. But thanks to the local community, the priory, complete with its exquisite Romanesque nave, now stands in all of its glory to welcome Church of England parishioners. And again, a nice picture of that. Attached to the priory today is a small graveyard where a few members of local families who were laid to rest. However, there is a notable gravestone there of a child who wasn't from the community. It was the second child of Charles Darwin. That's right, the acclaimed naturalist, geologist, and biologist. The grave, which is never without a bloom even today, is moving given the age of the child. Anna Elizabeth Darwin, who was born in 1841 and died just 10 years later. Its simple inscription is, "A dear and good child." Doesn't quite illustrate Darwin's depths of feeling for his beloved Anne. When Darwin's wife Emma was heavily pregnant with their 9th child, Anne became dangerously ill. Darwin decided to leave his family behind and take his young daughter, who was described as his favorite child, to the spa town of Malvern to receive a water cure. Sadly, she did not survive. She succumbed to her illness, and we think it was possibly tuberculosis, while there, and died not long after her 10th birthday. And there's a picture also of the gravestone. While the story of Anne Elizabeth is very sad, it reveals a side to Darwin that most people are not aware of. Untypically for the times and his social status, Darwin was very much a family man and a real hands-on father. His desperate efforts to save his daughter showed his very human, parental side, far from all his scientific theories and controversies. And in the end, despite his wavering faith, he lovingly placed her in the arms of Jesus, as the IHS inscription suggests. And that's the story. Could it be that the man that thousands and millions have called a rank atheist, could it have been that he himself used that expression? Because it almost is indicated by the Christian symbol that was on her gravestone, that he placed his dear daughter in the arms of Jesus. Just let that sit on your head for a while. I'm Stan Houston. Interesting story and a closing idea. We'll be right back. There we go. Who knew? Who knew that story? I didn't, and I was deeply moved by it. And does that explain a lot of things? Certainly it does. Does it leave a lot of things? Oh my goodness, I didn't know that. But now we know a little bit more than we did. And perhaps, could it be that Charles Darwin, when his dear daughter died, what he did, in spite of all of his ideas that some people think rejected the very presence and being of God, that in the end, maybe he placed his good and dear child in the arms of Jesus. Again, something to think about. I'd like to be able to help you learn some new things and hopefully be helpful to you in these challenging times. So please reach out to me. We have interesting ideas and we have some helpful ideas. So please reach out to me at stanhusted@gmail.com. stanhusted@gmail.com. We also want to bring you into the radio world of the century so you can tell your own good stories. And my goodness, people might even say when they hear stories of you, my goodness, who knew? Remarkable people of mastery, mystery, and maturity. Mastery, mystery, and maturity. And God gives us, please give us more of people just like that. All the best and blessings. Till next time, I'm Stan Husted. Bye for now.